All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. We are actually doing a extra stream tonight. Or I guess technically it's not extra; it's a makeup stream because we missed Wednesday's stream. So I decided to go ahead and just do another stream tonight to kind of make up for that, and hopefully we can get a little bit further on our texture system updates. So that is kind of what's on the roster for tonight. Spiro, you are indeed first over on the Twitch side. Smudge, he just beat you. All right, so before we jump into that, though, I do want to just take a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partner, Javier Alazaron. That's the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships, followed by our partners, Graboli's Inc. and Matt Osgard. That's the next tier of subscription, followed by the list of names you see here on the screen. They are a combination of other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. I don't have any sponsors aside from you guys, so all of those funds definitely help me cover things like the cost of running the channel, such as hosting fees, software licenses, eventually assets, things like that. So thank you all for that support. It is greatly appreciated. And of course, I appreciate each and every one of you viewers, whether you're joining us here live, either on the YouTube side or the Twitch side, or if you're catching the VOD after the fact. Without you guys, this channel and thus this project would not exist. So thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Potham, how's it going? Good to see you. Let's see. Uh-oh, why are we streaming on Friday? Yeah, so this is a bit of a makeup stream because I wasn't feeling very well on Wednesday and wasn't able to stream. So I'm actually making that up this time. I don't always have the ability to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and do that tonight. I think it's going to wind up being a little bit of a shorter stream tonight, but I figured maybe we can make a little bit of progress and or chat if you guys want to do that as well. So we'll see how far along we get. The plan tonight is to basically hopefully make a bigger dent in the texture system rework in terms of actually loading textures. And I've done a little bit of stuff off screen, just kind of moving some code around, nothing we haven't actually talked about previously. And so I'm in the process now of sort of deduplicating between the synchronous and the asynchronous versions of logic. And then, of course, I've got to move a lot of the logic for the asynchronous operations post-asset load to the actual callback. So we've got to handle that tonight, too. But I didn't want to do that off camera. I wanted to do that right here so that we can actually get a feel for how that logic should work. I am good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Can actually watch the stream, so it's nice you're streaming tonight. Yeah. It also mixes it up a little bit rather, so that maybe some people that can't normally catch the stream can. All right. So I think the next thing we need to talk about with the texture acquisition, and if you recall, we're basically going to pipe in all of our other API endpoints through this guy. So this is the asynchronous version, and then there's a synchronous version down below that looks very similar to this. So the way that this one works is we do a little bit of processing on the options that we pass here. That looks a little bit like this. So we've got a bunch of different options that we can pass here in terms of texture type and some different flags in terms of what type of texture it is. The pixel formats, which I don't know if we actually went into that. I meant to actually go into that in the last stream, and I think I forgot. So we're going to touch on that really quickly before we move on. And then we have the actual texture type itself, so whether it's a texture 2D or a texture 2D array or a cube map or what have you. And then, of course, we have the width, height, MIP levels, depth / layer count. They're kind of the same thing. It's just we've got two names there just to kind of make its use a little bit more clear in code at the time. then we have these other things we already discussed: name, image asset name, package name, layer asset names, and layer package names, and then pixel data and pixel array size. I think we discussed this, but what we did not discuss is the pixel format. So pixel format is similar to the k-asset image format / the texture format that we had. We actually had two enumerations in separate parts of the code, and there was a lot of overlap between them. And my initial thought between splitting those out was maybe we would have some image formats that weren't supported as textures. But the more I kind of thought about it, the more that didn't really make sense as much, when we could just, throw errors if it's something that isn't supported necessarily. And so I'm going to consolidate the texture format and the image format into this k-pixel format, and pixel format is going to be used across the board for everything. And so we have just a few basic types here. We may or may not expand this depending on our needs. The most common one that we're going to be using is RGB8, so that's RGBA8 rather. So that's the 4-channel, 8 bits per channel texture. That's typically what you're going to have. There's also RGB8, so that is just 3 channels instead of 4. We also included a couple of others here. These other ones aren't necessarily supported yet, but eventually we're going to need them, specifically RGBA32 for HDR whenever we put that in. So, we're just going to kind of try to consolidate a little bit on there. Okay. So, oops, wrong button. Let's see. So that is texture load options. And essentially the way that this works is we go through here, we grab a texture, a pointer to a texture out of our internal texture array. And then we obviously make sure that we have that actual reference. We were able to get that successfully. Increment the reference count if it already exists, right? So if this returns a pointer to a texture, and that means we already have one by that name that exists. And so we just increment the reference count and call the user callback that would be supplied here. Because this is an asynchronous call, we need to have some sort of callback to say, hey, this texture is actually done and loaded, right? And so we make that callback with the texture and the listener that's passed along here. And then we obviously also return a pointer to the texture because that's what our API expects. So we have that. And then if it doesn't exist, we get a new texture, which gets a new entry out of our array. And then if that fails for some reason, we go to this cleanup, which this is probably going to wind up changing. So we set some different properties here, like the format, the type, the width, height, MIP levels, if they are provided. We set up some flags based on the Booleans that are passed in. We set up our auto release. And then here is where things start to differ a little bit. So one of the things that I did to sort of deduplicate a lot of logic is we have get image asset names from options. And this actually performs this logic that we are looking at in a couple places on the last stream, where we either extract layer image asset names or we extract image asset name, a single image asset name, and then potentially build a cube map set of names from that, or a 2D single texture, right? And so the whole purpose of this function is we've split out this logic into a function because we call it from multiple places. And this guy returns an array of image asset names and package names. And you'll notice we have a triple pointer here, which we don't see too often in code, but sometimes that exists with strings. So what is this triple pointer here? This guy is a pointer to an array of character arrays / strings. So essentially what we do here is we take the address of an array of strings. And that's probably going to be zeroed out when we initially start, right? Or it should be anyways. And this is an internal function, so it's okay to make that assumption. And we go ahead and perform the allocation in here because we won't know until we examine the options object, how many we're actually going to need. So we set this count here. We allocate and fill out those two arrays here depending on the texture type. And then down here is the cube, and then the texture 2D types as well. And then at the very bottom, we set the out count to count and return true. So the out count is simply a pointer to a U16 that tells us how big these two arrays are. And these are always going to be of the same size. So we can use this function to do essentially just all of that logic and, a couple of lines here, as opposed to having two versions of that same logic split across the code base. So these start off as 0. We pass the address of those things here, right? And that's how those arrays are filled out. If, for some reason, we don't have any sort of assets passed along with that, these will remain 0 and remain unset. And that's okay because we might have something, some other type of data that needs to be handled. So the fork in the logic is, if we have image asset names, meaning this array has been initialized, this is where we set up a context listener to load up our required assets. And so we go through here, we request those assets, providing a callback to texture kasset image loaded. We'll get to that in a second. And we either get that using from a specific package or requesting the image directly from the default package, which would be the application package. So we loop through all of those. That basically means that this callback will be made once for every iteration of this loop, right? So we'll need to bear that in mind. However, if we are requesting assets at this point, then this is what needs to be handled asynchronously, right? And so that's what this call and this call does. If we do not need to do that, then we can actually handle this further down in the function, right? So we either handle this logic in this callback here, or we upload to the GPU afterwards. So if we have assets, then we just boot out right here, returning T, which is a pointer to the texture. If we do not, then we're going to have to actually do some of this logic down here, which I still have to sort of split out some of this logic here as well. And that's kind of where we left off, right? We've got some of these things we've already kind of gone over a little bit. This calculate map levels from dimension. This is a function that we've seen before that lives, I think it lived in our image loader, right? But essentially what this does is basically takes the larger of the width and height, and then it says how many times can we divide that into 2, add 1 to that, and that's how many map levels we need. So that is just how we figure that out automatically. If MIP levels is 0. So MIP levels is a provided option, right? And so I think I even put a comment in here, set to 0 to calculate MIP levels based on size. So if you're creating a texture and you want 1 MIP level, which basically means no MIP maps, then you would go ahead and set that to 1 explicitly in the options. If you want auto-generated MIP maps, then you would go ahead and leave that set to 0. And then we basically build this all pixels array, and that is what eventually gets uploaded into the GPU. I also took all of this logic from the assets portion to say, are we dealing with pixel data that was provided, or are we dealing with a set of assets? And we have a new function called combine asset pixel data. And so this takes an array of assets, some properties from the texture, array size, width, height, whether or not where'd we go? Here we go. Whether or not we should release the assets when we're done with them, which is usually going to be true. And then a pointer or a pointer to the array size and a pointer to the actual array itself. And so this combine pixel data is this function that we had previously, right? So we've just kind of moved that off separately. All right, let me, before we continue with this, let me just catch up on chat. Let's see. Smudge, what am I, chopped liver? No, far from it, Smudge. Let's see. Rocher, thank you for the hi emote there. Sikelos Music, good to see you. How's it going? Little Carlito, good to see you. 7th, yeah. Die Machine 007, good evening to you as well. Let's see, can I ask you a perhaps very annoying question? Go for it, and I might give you an annoying answer. It's going? Fair enough, Sikelos. Yeah, I get that. Galactic Past, good to see you over on the YouTube side. From Lake, good to see you as well. I'm doing well, thank you for asking. For someone who missed the last 2 months of live streams, what's new? So, we did a retrospective, and we have gone ahead and laid out a few of the pain points in the API that we've tripped over just trying to do gameplay code. And so we are rectifying some of those things. So one of the things was the way that we had resources being loaded was very cumbersome. And so I've decided to simplify that quite a bit. The asset system also needed a few tweaks to kind of simplify that API as well. Because just having to provide that sort of request structure all over the place is kind of a pain in the butt. And so, in theory, in terms of making things generic, it was great, right? But I feel like it went a little bit too far in the generic direction, so we're kind of reining that back a little bit. We went through a whole bunch of that stuff, and then we already started making our changes to the asset system, and we've changed binary assets, and we changed image assets, and now we're changing the texture system to use those assets directly, and we're getting rid of the sort of resource system that we had in place because, to be honest, it's just kind of overcomplicating things. So we are in the process of trimming things down, making the API easier to use, and deleting a lot of code. And so a lot of this code that we're seeing here is actually combinations of things from other parts of the code base that are all getting removed. And we're trimming things down to the least verbose option, right? Or version of that. So that's kind of what we're doing now. We're on the texture system at the moment, which is probably going to be the most wide-reaching one, and then the other assets will follow along that. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. I do say a lot. You're right. It's a bad habit of mine. Let's see. It's going. Why not use Rust or Odin? That's not really such a annoying question, right? See, I said again. There's a few reasons for that. A is preference. So I used to write C++ a lot, but my C++ was very C-like. And I just kind of went to myself, why am I just using C++? I'm not really using the C++ features. Let's try this in C. And I eventually wound up saying, okay, well, I like C a lot better than C++. It's a much simpler language. It compiles faster. There's a lot less, hidden stuff that C++ kind of forces on you. And there's a lot of things that I just didn't really like about the C++ way of doing things. So that is where I kind of wound up with C. That's why I'm on C. As far as why I haven't gone to Rust or Odin or any of those other ones, frankly, again, preference. I used Rust for a little bit. Now, granted, I've not built a huge project with it, so I'm not completely qualified to speak on it, right? And the same is true kind of with Odin. But Rust, I used just enough to get annoyed by how much it screams at you for just about everything. It just gets in your way for all kinds of stuff. And for something like a game engine, you need to be able to have control over how you manage your memory and stuff like that. And I don't like having that control taken away from me so much. That's just a preference, right? So that's my main reason for not using Rust. I might, give it a whirl on a project in the future, but I'm also almost 80,000 lines into this project, and so I'm not going to switch to another language at this point. Oh yes, you're right. It was categorized. It was categorized as a curse word, and I'm supposed to. Yeah, I forgot about that, actually. That's very funny, because I'm not used to censoring it. I'm supposed to say with a bleep. Let's see. I did start the journey of learning Neovim, so that's happening. Awesome, Sikalos. I think once you get really good with it, you're going to be like, how did I ever live without this? For sure. Odin is also very simple, and you have all the control. I love Odin. So I've heard good things about Odin. However, it's one of those projects that, again, I'm not going to change because I've already got a huge project already written in it. I don't want to have to learn a new language at the same time that I'm trying to build something like this. I also don't want to potentially run into language bugs. So C has been around for forever. C++ even arguably has been around for forever. So language bugs in that do exist, but are highly unlikely. You've got things like undefined behavior and stuff like that. But what worries me about these newer languages that haven't been around all that long is I worry about, getting very far into a project and then hitting a language bug and being completely blocked by it and not being able to get around it. So I do worry about that a little bit. I don't know how big of a concern that is, but it is a concern, especially with something, compiler bugs and stuff like that. I worry about that. So I know with C, that's not really an issue. Okay. I really love Odin, but I'm not going to lie, there's something really nice about Straight C. I agree. Totally agree. It has a good code feel. I agree. Totally. I can understand very well why somebody wouldn't want to use, especially for a game engine. Yes. People have used it, though. The Bevy engine, I think, is written in Rust, if I remember correctly. And I just said it again and didn't bleep it, but there you have it. Weird compiler bugs. Yep. Mostly just tired of the Visual Studio clunkiness. Getting screamed at about errors that aren't actually there. Amen to that. Totally understand that. Totally understand that. And that was actually why I switched to... at first, I switched to VS, but, eventually we switched to Neovim, and it's much, much better in my opinion. I prefer it. How did you get through understanding build systems for C and stuff? I don't really use build systems for this. The closest thing I use to a build system is make, and that's temporary. We have a single make file in here that we use to build everything. And we have a couple of, essentially our build system is this. So we have this make file here, and then we have a couple of shell scripts or batch files for Windows that we run depending on what we want to do. So build all, build a debug version of everything, build release. So this basically, these two call build all with a debug or a release set of flags. Clean is basically to just clean the solution. And then we have, batch files for all of those things for Windows. And so eventually what we're going to wind up having, and I've actually already kind of started on it, it's just not ready yet, is we're actually going to have a build system for this that is written in C for C. And then we won't need any of this stuff. We can actually just use Clang or GCC or whatever it is that we're going to use to build our build executable, which then builds everything else. Right now we're using Clang, Went to Nia Vim about 2 years ago, thanks to Prime, and it was the best decision. Yeah, I really, really like it quite a lot. I've been using it now for a few years, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Anytime I have to go back to any other editor, I frown a little bit. I make a sad face. You are recording the most large macro ever made in Vim. Oh, yeah. Sometimes I hit the Q key by accident, and then I just kind of override it by hitting it a few more times. Because, I've got these big old Sasquatch fingers, and sometimes, I accidentally hit the Q key as I'm typing. I do that all the time. Usually I notice it because it kind of breaks the IntelliSense a little bit. But, all right. So, we were at combine asset pixel data. We already kind of went through this logic in the previous stream, so I'm not going to really step through it again. The logic itself hasn't changed. It's just located somewhere else. So, basically, everything from even determining the MIP levels all the way down to the end here all needs to be moved to our callback, this guy. So I think I've already done part of that, but what I'm going to do is, since I've updated this so much, I think I'm just going to move it again and overwrite what's there. So let's just take all of this, and we'll take all of this except for the return T. We need to leave that there. And then we will go to, oh, you know what? We need, wait a minute. We need 2 versions of this. I can't necessarily do that because there's 2 code paths here, right? So part of this needs to go through this callback. Part of this needs to happen if we have pixel data. So I guess what really has to happen is we actually need to have a function that encapsulates all of this that we can call from either place. Okay, so let's see, what are the things that are used here? So we need the texture, the name, the options. We are going to need options, yep. This can go just as is. I think that might actually be it. The state pointer is global static. Yeah, I think that's it, actually. So, all right, let's take this. So we said we need this minus the return T. Should we? Yeah, I guess we don't have to. Maybe I'll take the return T as well. And we'll just go to the bottom here and we'll do a new static. We'll do a texture, K texture rather. And let's just do, I don't know what I'm going to call this yet, but let's just call it apply assets, asset data. Sure, that's fine. We're probably going to wind up renaming that. So we need K texture, pointer to that called T. We need a K name. That's mostly for debugging purposes. We need the texture load options, I thought it was. Acquire texture with options. K texture load options, that was it. I guess we should probably take, you know what, let's take a pointer to that. I'm going to take a constant pointer to that. We'll say options. And what was the last thing I said I needed? Oh, the assets themselves. So I guess we'll do K assets image, and it's going to be an array of pointers to image assets. Okay, that should get us most of what we need. And I think most of this is just going to be doing that, converting things to use the arrow operator. I think that's probably going to be almost all of it, actually. Here's one more. Success. Right. So I guess we can put that up here for now. We'll just do B8 success equals false. We're going to default that to false. And only if we get all the way to here will it be true. Right? So let's call this texture apply asset data. Oops. Okay. So we have, oh, image asset names. Okay, so the cleanup for this is actually not going to be done here. It's going to be done by the caller of this function. So we can get rid of those for now. And I guess instead of returning the texture, we could return true or false, I guess. We could just return success, actually. Let's do that, because I don't see a need. The caller is already going to have a pointer to this texture. I don't think we need to return that, right? We could just return a Boolean. And then down here, I think this is the only return point, so we can actually just do return success. Let's see. You look very different from your Twitch profile picture. That is because that is a avatar picture from 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And the problem is like I've updated it. I have like newer photos, but like there were so many places I'd have to update it that are using that same image that I just haven't bothered. I look, I guess, kind of like that if I were to cut my hair and cut my beard off, right? I'm just fatter and older now. Let's see. You could be like me and swat several keys on the way to the mouse. I've done that before. I have to reach between my keyboard and mic boom. The boom has some very sharp edges, so I tend to keep my hand low, which means the keyboard takes the hit. Yeah, I actually have the, what is it, the Elgato desk arm thingy, so it like clamps to the back of the desk, and then it's got a low profile arm that comes underneath my monitor, and then just kind of puts it right here in front of me, which is pretty perfect, actually. Works really well. Speaking of encapsulation, did you catch any of the Uncle Bob sequel drama on X? I caught some of it on a cursory level, yes. I can't say that I cared to sort of dive into it too much, but I don't disagree. I think having the API be just string processing is weird. But, you know, when you consider that shaders kind of work the same way, it's not, I guess, really that different, but yeah. I don't know how you would do it differently, because I can't kind of make my mind escape that way of thinking when I think about databases, but yeah, I don't completely disagree. I just don't know, and that's one of the things I don't completely disagree with him on, to be completely honest. Change the lighting a bit, right? Let's see. He's got the ERP devs all fired up. Oh, I'll bet. You look much wiser. Is it the beard? Psycode, how's it going? Good to see you, buddy. You don't look a day over 15. Okay. That's funny. It always makes me laugh whenever I get carded, to buy booze or something. I'm just like, man, that ship has sailed so long ago. It's very funny. By the way, how did you get the types like B8, EU32, etc.? Sorry, I'm a C newbie. Yeah, no problem. Good question. Fair enough. We have a defines H file. And so what we do in here is we do type defs. So you can literally say, I am going to define this type, which is unsigned character, as a U8. or an unsigned short as a U16, or an unsigned int as a U32, right? Same thing down here with floats, right? So I defined a float as an F32, a double as an F64. Just a little bit more concise, or a lot more concise to type, right? Same thing with signed, right? There's signed and unsigned. Like, you don't want to have to be typing. Now, granted, like if you type int or short or long, right? Those are signed by default. So you don't have to type signed. I just did for, to be explicit here. But you don't want to have to be typing unsigned int or unsigned long everywhere, or unsigned int long, whatever you choose to use. You don't want to have to do that everywhere. Same with bool, right? Because C doesn't actually have a bool keyword like it doesn't have a bool keyword like C++ does. You actually have to use std bool to get this even. I used to use just 1 and 0, but I decided to go with this just because it's a little bit more technically correct, I guess. But that's how we got those. Underscore bool is the C version of a boolean given to us by std bool, which I actually must have included somewhere else because I don't actually have it in here. But yeah, like I said, there's no, so the keyword bool does not exist in C, right? It just doesn't. Let's see, how to start learning to code. That's a loaded question. So thank you for the follow, by the way. So what I usually recommend, okay. It heavily depends on what your knowledge of computers is in general, right? Have you written code before of any kind? That's the first thing. Usually what I do is if somebody wants to learn how to program C, I usually recommend this book, which is the book I learned to use to program C. It's Sam's Teach Yourself C in 24 hours. That's 24 cumulative hours, not like you'll learn it overnight. But it's a pretty good start on it, right? And then also read the C language specification at some point, and you'll want to dive into how different compilers work, that kind of thing. There's a whole lot to it. I usually recommend to start with that book, and then read a lot on it, but also write code. Once you get past the initial syntax and how to write loops and how to write branching and even functions and things like that, right? Once you get past those basics, then you're going to want to start actually just writing code to get good with it, because the only way that you're actually going to get good with it is to actually use it. You can read all the theory you want until you're blue in the face, right? But until you actually use it to write something, you're not gonna take it on board here. So usually I say like a good project, once you've gotten past the basics, to get a good command of the C language is to implement a string processing library completely from scratch using no libraries, and try to match function for function what all of the higher level languages like C# or something like that provide for strings. If you do that, by the time you've written something that robust, you'll have a good command of C. You've never touched it. Yeah. So, C may not be, you might want to take a look at, what I would recommend you do actually. There is what do they call it? There's a free series of videos on YouTube for Harvard CS50. Watch those. Start with those. They dive into a couple of programming languages in there. They do touch on C in there as well, but yeah, watch those. That would be a good place to start. And then jump into learning C. Yeah, watch the CS50 stuff. That'll definitely be a good spot to start. If you're like absolute beginner, that's a good place. Yeah, it really starts you from scratch. I actually started writing a C course that kind of starts and kind of approaches it in a somewhat similar way. But my course isn't done. It's going to be free when I'm done with it, but there's some of that stuff is there up on YouTube, but it's not quite as comprehensive as the CS50. So I would say go with that, and then yeah, hope that helps. Let's see. How did you learn Vulkan or how a GPU works? Lots of reading. Lots and lots and lots of reading. And also writing code and looking at code examples. But the example, or the thing I always say there is when you're trying to learn Vulkan, first off, if you've never done graphics programming before, don't start with Vulkan. Start with OpenGL. Use OpenGL to wrap your head around the fundamentals of graphics programming. And then once you get to that point, then, you know, once you've written a few renderers with OpenGL and you're familiar with that, you're familiar with whatever language you're using, and you've got the basic techniques down, then make the jump to Vulkan. And usually what I say there is read the Vulkan spec, top to bottom, implement a Vulkan renderer, which is going to take you quite a while, especially the first couple times. Get that renderer working, throw it out. Read the Vulkan spec again. Write another renderer. Do it better this time. When you're done with that and you get it working, throw it out. Read the spec again. Write another renderer, right? That's the way that you're going to work, that you're going to learn it the best. And of course, looking at code samples. Let me catch up over here on the YouTube side for a second. Oh, I think I answered that question for you over on the Twitch side. Okay. Derek, how's it going? I hope I pronounced that, or is it... Yeah, I think it's Derek, or Derog. Out of curiosity, do you have hot reloading, ever use it? Do you ever directly call malloc, or are you doing mmap with custom allocators? Do you use debugger? Okay, so there's a couple questions in there. So I do have hot reloading. We're not currently using it, but we will be using it heavily once the actual game dev kicks into full swing. We do have that, though. We do have it set up and ready to go. We just don't really have much reason to use it at the moment. Do you ever directly call malloc? So we have various memory calls per platform. I think at the moment I am actually calling malloc once for the Mac OS and the Mac OS layer and the Linux layer. And basically what I do is I allocate a huge block of memory, and then I've got custom allocators that dole out memory from that huge block. So that's that. As far as on the Windows layer, we do actually use, I think I use virtual alloc on the Windows layer, if I remember correctly. It's been a bit. Might be heap alloc. I can't remember which one I used. But that's the only time that we ever use that. Otherwise, our custom, what we call kalloc, points to our custom allocator, where we've got our own free list implementation and our own allocators that manage that huge block of memory for us. And within that, we can dole that up to other allocators. Like we've got a linear allocator that we use for per frame allocations. That's really fast. It just moves a pointer along in a block of memory. But that block of memory comes from, you know, the huge block of memory that we initially allocate. So we really just make one call to malloc. The only other place that would do malloc calls would be in the Vulkan validation layers, which I don't have control over, or any sort of OS layer code that I don't have any control over. But otherwise, no. Okay. Scratch the visual programming. Let me see. I also have a lot of experience with other languages. Is it possible? Oh, I missed a message here. I've barely used C++, and I'm now making a game with OpenGL. I also have a lot of experience with other languages. Is it possible? So is it possible to make a... Let me scroll back to your original question. So I'm assuming you're saying is it possible to use C to do it? Then yes. I mean, so C++ is a superset of C, right? So if you know C++, you're going to have a couple things that you're going to have to wrap your head around when moving to C, but it shouldn't be too terrible. It's actually a much simpler language than C++. So yes, it's definitely possible. Thank you so much for your recommendation. Yeah, no problem. I hope it helps. What does pragma once do in your code? So pragma once, you're talking about this guy, means that everything that follows in this file is only ever included once per translation unit. So what can happen with header files is you have header files that include other header files, and sometimes you can get that same header file via secondary included more than once into a single compilation unit or a C file. And the traditional way of doing this was something called include guards, where you would have, if not defined, and then you'd have, some like defines, right? Then you would defines H, right? And then you go all the way down here at the end and go end if, right? And so what this would do is, this is called an include guard. And essentially what this would do was, it would, the first time you include this in a file, it'll say, okay, well, defines H is not defined. So we're going to go ahead and do everything within this block, right, all the way down to here. And then it would define, as part of that, defines H. So the next time you included this file, it goes, well, defines H is already defined, so we don't need to actually do that, and it would just stop and not define all this stuff again. And the reason that you'd want to do that is because you can't declare this stuff more than once, right? So if I were to try and, the type defs aren't really so much a thing, but if we had function definitions, which actually this file is probably not the greatest example because there's a lot of funky stuff going on in here. But if we had a bunch of function definitions and stuff in our header file, as you typically do, and you included it more than once without some sort of include guard, then it would say, hey, this has already been defined. What are you doing? Why are you defining it more than once, you dingus? And pragma once is sort of a shortcut way of an include guard. It's technically not standard C, but it is, every major compiler supports it, so I just use that instead. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for answering. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Okay, so I think we were saying that we wanted to, let's see, apply asset data. Did I get everything done in this function? I think I did. So we're going to take this and go all the way to the top here. And you're going to put that forward declare it here. And now we can call this from different various places, right? So when we go to, let's see, can I go back to this point, or am I too far? Yeah, I'm too far removed. Okay. Let's do with options. Yeah, we want the async version. Okay. So in here, let's see. I did say we were going to take this whole thing, right? So if we don't have image asset names, then we need to do texture apply asset data. We need to pass T. We need to pass name. We need to pass options. So we want the address of options. And we need to pass assets. So, oh, that's why it's not here. We don't have this at this level. I need this here. So let's do this here. All right, so all of this acquisition result stuff, all this all pixel stuff, this is all now handled by that one single function. So we can actually get rid of, I'm going to get rid of everything up to there, because there are a couple things that we want to keep. One of those things is we need to clean up this kind of stuff. The image asset names, the package names, assets, all of that kind of stuff. So we need that. And then instead of just assets existing, these are all actually in the context structure, along with, let's see. So this needs to be, oops, hit the wrong dang key again. Oh, it's because I'm recording a macro, like a dingus. See, I did it again. Okay, so we've got that. All right, I don't know that I want this to be the default behavior, right? But I'm going to, at least for now, put this in place, and we can always sort of adjust it as needed, because I'm pretty sure that defaulting to these different sizes is wrong. But we're going to roll with it, and what I'm going to do is actually, we're going to say, fix me, handle these defaults in a more reasonable way, such as finding any of the assets with a non-zero dimension. And that is because the assets that come through are potentially not loaded, right? We could potentially have an asset that doesn't load because maybe it's missing on disk or what have you, some other error. And so here we're sort of using the first asset to get the width of the texture, the height of the texture. MIP levels, actually this, we're pulling that from, here, from the asset itself. That may not be correct either. So I'm going to put a to-do here. Should this use the calculated? Okay. And then we have some more defaults here. Okay. So name. Name is going to come from context name. And then we have context options, I think. Did we not pass that through? Did we not pass that through? I thought we did. We did not. Okay. Why did we not do that? Because I think this actually requires, I believe this actually requires the options for a few things. Image asset name. Actually, it's just image asset name. Is that all that requires that for? Because if it is, no, we could potentially have pixel data. Okay, that's why. We should probably rethink that a little bit. I think instead of using image asset name, which is not necessarily going to be correct, we should actually be using kname string get name. And the same should be true for here. String get name. Okay. And then this probably also needs to be renamed because that label exists elsewhere. Let's call this, let's say texture. We'll call this texture apply asset data cleanup. All right, so we've got that sorted. Okay, so I guess we do need options. So what that means is I think this is saying we don't have options in here. So I think that's taking a constant to that, right? So we could actually just store a constant pointer to options, I suppose. Oh, wait a minute. No, let's take a copy of it. Because this is an asynchronous operation, and that could technically put us in a bad position if we could have a race condition if we take a pointer to it instead of a copy of it. So let's go to here. Actually, let me take this and go to this guy. And right in the preview, we are just going to put an options structure. So that will fit there. Let's come back to this and go back to let's go back to this for a second, where we're filling out this context. We actually need to say context options equals options, so that we don't forget to pass that through. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue. Okay, so this returns a Boolean to indicate success. So if this fails, then we are going to go with this. So we'll just do a go to that guy, which essentially skips the success being set to true, right? So our error condition basically uses this go to anywhere we run into an error. I guess actually we don't even need to do that in here. Looking at this, we could actually simplify this, because I think that's the only error condition in here. So let's, instead of doing this, let's change this to a positive case, and then move success equals true here and get rid of the label. Right, so if we apply the asset data, that's going to handle the upload to GPU, GPU upload of pixel data. And then we don't have, I believe this actually, yeah, this handles all of that stuff for us. So we actually don't need, we actually need to free. That free is here for all pixels and free pixels. So we actually don't need this. If we have assets, okay, so at this point, we apply the asset data. Does this free the asset data? I think it does right there. So let's see, if we do oh, actually I'm not using that Boolean, which is bad. We should do if release assets, then we want to do this. And then I guess, let's see, out pixels, assets. So we take a pointer to the array here. So if we release assets, we should probably also just release the array once we're done with this. So I guess we'll do, is that going to work? Yeah, I think it will. So we could do k free type C array. The block is going to be assets. The type is going to be k asset image pointer array. And the count is going to be count, right? And that should be it. And then I guess we could do... oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let's not do this here. Let's actually free the array outside of this, right? This is going to release the individual assets. So we could do assets, sub I equals 0. But as far as the actual array itself goes, we should probably free that outside of this. Okay, so by the time we're done with this, assets is passed in here. So texture apply asset data. This is what should clean it up. So here we're going to clean that up here. This is going to be k-asset image pointer t-array size. The image asset names we don't actually have here anymore. So this block goes. So all we need to free is that. And then if not success, instead of doing all this, we can actually just do, let's see, release texture cleanup is what I want. And we can do T, and then clear references is going to be true. So that texture cleanup replaces all of this. And then T equals 0, return T. And then we make our user callback. So instead of returning T there, all we do is that call to the user callback, passing along T, whether or not it's successful or not. And then we free the listener context, which I think that's where we need to actually free image asset names and package names. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna do, let's see, if not success, we actually need to free and actually are we ever not gonna have T here? I don't think we are. I think we can get rid of that check. So if context assets, and then we'll say if context image asset. Actually, we don't even need to do that. We can actually just do, I added something new, string cleanup array. So we can literally say, wait a minute. That's a pointer to, let me think about this for a second. So it's a context image asset names, and then T array size. And then we can do the same thing, oops, for package names. And then this function checks to see if string array exists first, loops through each one of those and calls string free on it, and then frees string array itself. Okay, so we should actually be good on that. So we free those there, we don't leak any memory, and we should be good to go. All right, so that is the asynchronous version done. Texture, okay, asset, image loaded. So once we're done with that, the only thing we have to do is to do handle pixel data. Before we jump into that, let me just catch up on some chats. Let's see. I love talking while coding too. Yeah, kind of have to do that while you're streaming, right? For sure. How do you do async with C? I've heard of P threads. So I use the term async, right, a little bit loosely here because some languages have like their own async and await. Like if you've ever used JavaScript, like that's a whole actual keyword and there's things associated with that. The way that it works in this context is when we say something's asynchronous, we have a job system that is responsible for multiple long-running threads that we can assign work to. And so essentially, when we say something's asynchronous, we are kicking off a job on one of those job threads. And so that could take any amount of time to complete. And so we spin off that task, and then it goes to another thread for processing, and then at some point comes back and says, hey, I'm done, with a callback that you would have supplied when you actually kick off the job. And so we actually wrote a job system around threads to manage that for us. So whenever we kick off a job, that is typically on a different thread with a callback and all that stuff. So that's why you see these callbacks here, because that's ultimately how it works all the way down the chain. So yeah, on Linux and Mac OS, we are using pthreads, and then on Windows, we actually use the thread primitive from the Windows API. Okay, so why are you not scared of using GoTo? I heard you're not supposed to use it anymore. So that is rubbish, right? So people say don't use GoTo because it's very easy to use it wrong or incorrectly. And we've got some errors here because we have to clean that up. But probably a good example of where you want to use GoTo. Let me see. Where was that? Let me pull up an example and then we'll talk about it. Okay, let's take this section of code for example. So we've got well, I guess, yeah. All right. So we've got this loop right here, where we're processing image assets in a loop, right? So we've got an array of them. We're processing them one at a time. And it's pointers to those things, right? So each one of these is a pointer to an asset. So first off, if the asset is null, then what we want to do is continue. But there are other operations that we want to do rather than just continuing, right? So in this case, we always want to increment an offset variable by the layer size. So the layer size basically represents how much memory each individual layer of a texture takes with its pixel data. And so the way that we're loading this into memory, essentially what we're doing here is we're taking a bunch of assets and we're taking their pixel data and we're loading those chunks contiguously in a massive chunk of memory, right? So we're combining those into one section of memory. And so we need to, as we progress through those, keep a running offset of where we are in that block of memory that we're copying over that pixel data to. So in this case, if we have a null pointer to that asset, we still need that memory. We still need that offset operation to happen. And so we could just do, this. and then continue, right? And this is what you'll see everywhere, right? After throwing an error, right? You'll see this all over the place, right? And then down here, you'll see the same thing. And then you'll see the same thing here, and the same thing here, right? As you're checking all of these various things. The problem with this is, what if we needed to change how, what was actually happening here? What if we needed to change, maybe the offset needed, I don't know, an additional 4 bytes or something, right? It's a contrived example, but still. What if this logic had to change? You would have to then know to change this logic, and this logic, and this logic, right? Versus, you can use a goto, which jumps directly to this label in code. So it just says, whatever we're doing here, doesn't matter what comes after it, we want to jump to this section in code. And this is great for error and cleanup scenarios where, in some systems you'd have a try, catch, finally. You can think of this sort of as a finally, right? And so this is great for those types of scenarios where you don't want to repeat yourself, right? I could just say, well, I need to perform this same operation, right? No matter what I do, right? So I want to go to this section, which essentially skips all of this code, but still performs the thing I need to be done regardless of error condition at the end, right? So that could be releasing an asset if it exists, right? And incrementing the offset. So instead of repeating all of this logic every single time, or worse, splitting it out into a function and calling a function a bunch of times, you can use this goto. And so in this case, what the goto is jumping over for us is, A, it bypasses all these other checks, right? But also it bypasses the copy memory, which would fail if asset didn't exist, right? Or if we have a mismatch in layer sizes, right, and we're expecting a width or a height that differs from what we're expecting here, that's going to throw off our memory footprint in terms of when we actually go to do that copy operation, right? And so any of these error cases, essentially all we're doing is reporting these errors in this case, right? But it allows us to, report those errors specifically, and then also jump to, the sort of finally, if you will, with that. So, yeah, I hope that makes sense. So anybody that says, you should never use goto, that's not really correct, right? There are plenty of cases to use goto. The thing you have to bear in mind is this is always going to make a jump to wherever this label is, as long as it's within the function, no matter what you do. And that may not be an expected flow of code, right? And so you do have to bear that in mind when you're using these things. It's very easy to screw these up. So that's why a lot of people say, don't use it because it's easy to screw up, right? My argument for that is, learn what it does, learn how it works, learn when you should use it, and you won't have any problems. And more evil is set jump and set long jump. Yeah, so that's why we're using goto, right? And it's very common in a scenario like this. It's also common in situations where maybe you've loaded up an asset into memory and you're processing that asset, and there's multiple ways that can actually fail, right? And you still need to actually release the resources for that asset all the way at the end, whether or not you process it successfully. That's another case where you would do this. So instead of having like a bunch of nested code where you have this check and then you nest this check in here and then you nest this check in here, which is nested in here, and you nest, that's super hard to read as well. So, yeah, I hope that makes sense. I wish C had to defer or like error defer in Zig. That's the only part I wish they ported to C. Yeah, well that and not const expression, comp time, which is essentially const expression. Creative Waste, how's it going? First time chatter, teammate hype, awesome. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for the follow also. I greatly appreciate that. I appreciate that support. That makes it simpler, actually. You changed my mind. C gives you tools, and if you use them wrong, it's just being a bad dev. Yeah, if you use the tool wrong, like, is it the tool's fault? No, I would argue. So people say go-tos are evil. No, go-tos are not evil. It's just, with great power comes great responsibility, right? It's not go-to line number. Actually, what's funny about that, so the first language that I programmed in, which was QBasic and MS-DOS 5 back in the day, a go-to was accompanied by a line number, actually. So, yeah, that is a thing. How am I doing tonight? Thank you for asking. First off, I'm doing quite well. We're actually doing I don't normally stream on Friday nights. We're doing a makeup stream because I missed a stream on Wednesday. But yeah, I'm doing quite well. How about you? Is it good to start doing game projects C# Unity with AI while my knowledge is 0? So, bit of a molten take on this, right? And I'm not going to say a hot take because this is hotter than a hot take. It's a molten take, right? If you are new to programming and you're learning about programming, the absolute last thing you should do is touch AI. It is one of the single worst things to happen to development in general for any field when people are trying to learn on it, because, and there's a few reasons for that, you don't want to rely on it to sort of think for you, because it can't think, right? It's nothing but basically a series of weighted averages and a token generator, right? That's all it's really doing. It flat out gives you the wrong answer sometimes. It hallucinates other answers, and it tends to write unusable code. Like, I've not gotten anything from ChatGPT that I would ever actually use. And so, and there's various reasons for that, right? There's performance reasons. There's I've seen code with memory leaks, really, really bad stuff, right? But that's not even really the worst part about it. The worst part about it is you have to learn how to interpret the error messages and the warning messages and what you see on the screen on your own, and think critically about it. And the same goes when you're writing code and you're trying to understand what to write, and you don't want to rely on AI to do that for you. If it's like a major crutch, and I'm telling you, like, it's going to be the worst thing for your learning that you could possibly do. It's, as Diamond says, the biggest gotcha about AI is it's sold as a thing that can get new people to be good and productive very fast. But the reality is it's more of a tool for experienced programmers, if that, right? Sometimes it's good for inspiration, maybe, right? But that's a big maybe too, right? Like, if you say, explain the process of inverting a binary tree, sure, it could do that. That's fine. Simple stuff like that's fine. But you shouldn't rely on it, because the expression that I always like to use is anything difficult like this, anything worth doing, anything worth learning, there's no shortcut to learning and becoming a good programmer. And I underscore the word good, right? There's no way around learning this stuff. There's only through it, right? If you try to go around it, you're going to be missing out on all sorts of understanding that will eventually come to bite you in the butt when you're getting on with more advanced topics, right? So I would say, while you're learning to program, especially if you're brand new to it, put AI to the side and do not use it at all whatsoever. That's 100%. Don't use it. Once you get a little bit more experience, and I mean like mid-level, then maybe use it. But while you're still like junior programmer level, don't use it. Can't complain. About to do a little game dev stuff. Ooh, nice. Awesome. Are you about to stream some game dev stuff, by the way? Let's see. I heard the metaphor, AI is like the weatherman. You don't trust the prediction 2 days out, but if you ask them about the next hour, it's usually okay. AI stuff is good for like a slightly better LSP. And again, like, especially when you're learning though, like it's a crutch that's wrong, right? It's a bit like, um, I guess you could say it's a bit like using a set of crutches that could just, you know, occasionally just trip you up out of nowhere and you'll never see it coming. And then you'll be wondering why the code is broken because you're like, this thing gave me the code, it's supposed to be right. No, it's probably not. Help me get kickstarted on my first parser. Didn't work at first, but I understood it and fixed it myself by thinking. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? Like, but think about the experience you would have gained if you critically thought out that whole process by yourself, as opposed to having, you know, AI do it for you. Just the practice of going through the motions of actually thinking that stuff through and developing the solution on your own is going to be far more valuable to your skill set than relying on AI. Like one-line predictions, like finishing my for loop for me and finishing print functions or docstring. Oh yeah, I mean for that stuff, I guess it's okay. But again, I still wouldn't do that when you're new. Would you recommend reading the game engine architecture book? I recommend it all the time. I have it back here actually. I've recommended this thing probably 100 or 200 times on stream. Yes. It's a fantastic book. I recommend it all the time. Let's see. Do daytime stream stuff. I'm just relaxing, watching, and tweaking some enemy movement. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna, I'll tell you what I'll do though. I'm gonna toss you a follow. Creative Waste. And I'll check out your stream next time you're on. I want to start with C#. Any recommended video or website that I could start with? Okay. I don't think I'm qualified to recommend that. Here's why. I have been using C# since it was first released. I'm talking version 1.0. Actually, when it was in beta, I was using it. And I learned it by reading the C# language specification. In fact, I still have it. Let's see. This one is for C# 2.0, because I think I got rid of the 1.0 book. But yeah, this is the actual book from Microsoft Press. This is the way I learned it, right? Reading the language specification. That's usually going to be the best way to learn it. You could start off with tutorials and stuff like that, but if you want to learn it in depth, read the language specification. That's all online nowadays. I don't even know if you can get it printed anymore. Some humans hallucinate answers too, but I agree. As a beginner, you should get into the weeds. Yep, exactly. I mean, sure, I've probably done that on stream, right? But like the difference being, as a new developer, you're not going to know the difference, right? Watch Primogen team do the tower defense thing. For all accounts, amazing programmers, and they're having to rewrite their entire code because it's a broken mess. That's exactly my point, Diamond. I watched enough of that until like I couldn't stand watching it anymore because what was being generated was just so wrong. And game programming patterns, yeah, that's another one. It was just like 50 lines of code, fair enough. Definitely not if you're new. That's the most detrimental thing to you learning ever. Exactly. Yep. Had Claude make my pipeline. Got it done quickly, but holy hell, adding to it is near impossible. Yep, exactly, because it's not going to think that stuff through, right? Honestly, using AI takes away most of the joyful parts of programming. I agree with this, right? That's another reason. I like writing code. If I didn't like writing code, I wouldn't be doing this, right? It just leaves you with the tedious parts like debugging and trying to find issues, right? Just started dev stuff in November 2024, so I'm pretty new to this whole world. Awesome. Well, welcome to the world of game dev. Is Kohi ready for game development? We are. So the way that I'm doing this is Kohi is written from scratch, right? And the way that I'm doing this is we're actually in the middle of sort of developing, not even in the middle, we're at the beginning of developing a game using Kohi. So the way that I'm testing the engine is running it through its paces by actually developing a game with it. So I would say no, it is not ready yet, because I'm constantly making changes to it, because I'm like, well, okay, this system worked, but this other one kind of sucks. Let's redo that. Or, finding bugs, things like that. So we're very much in the process of very, very early days testing on the engine. So I would say it's ready for me to develop a game with, but it's not ready for anybody else to develop a game with yet. However, it is free and open source. There's a link to it there. And so if you click on that link, it'll bring you to this webpage. And if you scroll down, there's a GitHub link where you can actually access the code. It's free and open source. And so what this would be good for is a reference on, the various systems, or if you need code reference on how to do something, particularly in the Vulkan level or OpenAL or something like that. It could be good for that. But yeah, I would not use this to make a production game outside of the one I'm making now to test it. Had a friend who used AI to create a huge program. Then when it didn't work, I fixed it for $10K. Yeah, I think that's Apothema. I think that's going to be. I think programmers getting hired to fix AI slop is basically going to be a huge market in a couple of years, I think. Reading specification is so underrated. Yep, I do that for Vulkan as well. Being employed as an enterprise Java dev makes you dislike programming. I mean, it's stuff like that is the reason I do this stuff on the side, right? Yelled into my hands on stream so many times yesterday. So I'm being told I'm now officially solo dev. Yeah. So I have, I do this all the time, right? But I actually have something for that whenever I do something really stupid. Dingus-oriented programming style. I have this. Let's see. It's one of my favorite effects. I don't use it all that often, but I love it. Let's see. Hello, how do you handle global state on your engine? Oh, that's a loaded question. So all of our memory is allocated by the application using the engine when it starts up, or at least the call is made by the executable, right? So we allocate everything in a huge block of memory, which means that we can hot reload any of our DLLs that we want, theoretically, without losing state, other than maybe function pointers and stuff like that. So the way that we handle it is kind of broken up into a few different pieces. So there's engine state, which is sort of it's a structure of pointers to other states, right? And within that engine state, that has the individual state for our various systems within the engine. And then what sits next to that is sort of the application state. And the application state is the application-specific state, right? So the engine state is sort of the generic stuff that lives in the game engine, and the application state is the, for the application, which is what consumes the engine or uses the engine. It has its own state that's defined by the application. And so, it's up to the application as to how that gets passed around. There's a very basic API for communication between the engine and the application. There's a few. I think there's like 7 or 8 different entry points. Hooks for like update loops and render loops and things like that. Yeah, it's mostly. It's up to the engine to decide how the engine's managed. It's up to the application to decide how the application is managed. And we separate those so that we don't ever have to worry about how that's passed around. We just talk in meetings and don't code much. Makes me depressed. Yeah, I get that. Welcome to any sort of corporate development ever. Um, One more question: how to be more creative and know what to do next? Because once I start walking around my room, I didn't finish the project. Um, so how do I? Okay. So this is going to vary from person to person, right? Well, you're saying how do you be more creative? That's you have to find inspiration or things that inspire you, right? Whether it's um, looking at various artists online for their, if you're talking visual or creative inspiration, looking at artists who you like their style, or watching a movie or playing a game where you like the style. If you're talking about in terms of coding, it's kind of the same thing where you just kind of get inspiration from different code bases or different programmers out there. I've listened to a lot of talks by John Carmack, for instance. That's the way that you can get it there. Your second part of that kind of speaks a little bit to focus, and focus is kind of a whole separate thing. So you've got to find something that helps you sort of lock in and not get distracted. Sometimes what I have to do when I'm in a hardcore programming mode where I don't want distractions is I'll turn off my other monitors, and shut down things like Discord, close the internet browser unless I'm looking up something, put my phone across the room, things like that, right? There's various things that you can do to keep yourself from getting distracted. And avoid doom scrolling, right? Because it rots your mind. But yeah, let's see. Why code an OOP when you can use DOP, dingus-oriented programming? Yep. What is DOP? Data-oriented programming? I mean, yes, it is that, but there's also, yeah, we have a thing around here called dingus-oriented programming, which is when I'm being a dingus and doing stupid stuff online, like making stupid programming errors and stuff like that. And then not discovering them for like 20 minutes and then going, oh, that was stupid. We coined a term here that's called dingus-oriented programming, or DOP. Let's see. Great, I'm starting in game development with C language and SDL2, and I'm finding out how to handle the state in my games, enemies, player, scores, etc. Yeah, so using something like SDL is going to be completely different from that, right? But there is, like, generally speaking, you're going to want to have like probably a central structure that's going to have your application state in it, and then within that you're going to have substates for all the different game systems or what have you within that. But again, it varies widely on the game or the application that you're making and the requirements of that. Completely forgot that it shared the same abbreviation as data-oriented programming. Yeah, because I usually say data-oriented design, DOD, but yeah, I guess it does share the same. That's pretty funny, actually. Dingus Bingus, right? Chris is 16. Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. I really appreciate that support. Thank you very much, and thank you for the follow as well. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I don't have like sponsors or anything aside from you guys, so I really appreciate that support. It means a lot. Thank you. Okay. So, I think I've caught up on chat. But this is usually the time where I kind of wind down the stream for the night. I did get a little bit of a late start tonight, but this is an extra stream. So, I think I'm probably going to go ahead and wind it down for tonight, and we'll come back next week, and we will step through all of this texture system stuff. We actually got pretty far along, I think. I'm pretty happy with it. We're actually going to be able to start deleting a lot of code here soon. So sorry for being a distraction. No, don't apologize for that. Like, I love talking with you guys. Like, that's half the point of streaming, right? Following your game engine series from the start on YouTube. Awesome. I appreciate that, and I hope you find it useful. So yeah, part of the reason I started live streaming is so that, well, it's kind of multifold, right? It allows me to interact with you guys in real time, which is awesome. I like, this discourse that we have back and forth, the discussions and whatnot. I love doing that, so that's never an issue. But also, I can walk through some of my thought patterns as I'm kind of moving code around, and thinking my way through these various problems. And I've been told by a lot of you guys that that's actually pretty valuable, because some people, get the basics, but they kind of struggle with thought process when it comes to solving problems like this, or solving the problems that a project like this can present. And so I've been told that, me kind of doing sort of a mind dump or a brain dump here, and sort of just stream of consciousness as I'm kind of programming, I've been told it's pretty useful. So, but yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. So, not a distraction at all. Hopefully I'll be here for the next stream, or I'll disappear for 2 months again. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. All right, Apotham. Yeah, that's fair enough. I get it. Either way, it's great. It's great to have you here. Okay. Let's see if we can find somebody to raid. I'm going to kind of try to look for something that is semi-related to what we're doing. And if not, I've got a couple of different ideas, but we're going to see. I'm just going to scroll real quick and see if we can't find something semi-related. Bear with me here for a minute while I search. Okay, actually, we're going to raid Falanier. He is the leader of the stream team I'm on at the moment. He's leading that whole team, and it looks like he is doing, let's see, voice line editing stream. So that should be interesting. So we're going to check that out. Definitely tell him I said hello and ask him what he's up to. And yep, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later.